Most people who believe in UFOs assume they're alien spacecraft. And if they're right, then it would seem logical that these craft would have been spotted in their native environment. But at over 30 years of manned spaceflight, no official evidence of UFOs has ever been released.
But as we've learned, evidence doesn't have to be officially sanctioned in order to have validity. And in the case of UFO encounters by astronauts, yes, astronauts, there may be an ominous reason for this silence.
September 15th, 1991. With a live television audience watching, the crew of Space Shuttle mission STS-48 may have witnessed an incredible event, a UFO hovering in space. The shuttle incident has been studied in detail by physics professor Jack Kasher.
Discovery was the shuttle that was up at the time. The camera was on the horizon, and then suddenly there were some strange objects, glowing lights that seemed kind of strange, just kind of floating out there. And then there was a flash at the lower left part of the screen, and apparently in response to that, several of the objects changed their direction. One of them in particular came over and sharply shot back up and to the right. You see that on the TV screen.
NASA's Dr. Paul Lohman sees no mystery in the object's origin.
My guess would be that what we're seeing here are bits of ice, probably from the fuel lines on the external tank, possibly from plumbing on the main engine and so forth, but basically water ice that were carried up from the Earth, have flaked off and are floating around.
And what did the astronauts say about this mysterious event? Nothing, for good reason. Many of our government agencies, including NASA and the Defense Department, have an unwritten rule: keep quiet about UFOs. During Maurice Chatelain's years at NASA, he claims to have uncovered evidence that NASA has deliberately suppressed photos of UFOs and radio transmissions from startled astronauts. He documented everything he learned, including an encounter involving the astronaut James McDivitt.
McDivitt saw and photographed from Gemini 4 a silvery cylinder which was rapidly approaching on a collision course and missed the capsule by only a few meters. The object had an ovoidal shape and a bright lighted field.
If McDivitt had indeed seen a UFO, he kept silent. But another astronaut refused to keep quiet. Gordon Cooper wrote a letter urging that the UN investigate the UFO phenomenon. A letter that read in part,
I should point out that I am not an experienced UFO professional researcher. I have not yet had the privilege of flying a UFO, nor meeting the crew of one. I did have the occasion in 1951 to have 2 days of observation of many flights of them, of different sizes, flying in fighter formation, generally from east to west over Europe. They were at higher altitudes than we could reach with our jet fighters of that time.
It's rather amazing. I know Gordon Cooper fairly well. I worked with him years ago on the Mercury program. And I'm surprised to see he would say that, but he's been there.
Cooper's letter was swept under the official carpet. Allegedly, so too was another astonishing incident involving the first two men on the moon, Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin.
Armstrong and Aldrin, in the landing module, saw UFOs on the edge of a crater.
What they saw on the moon has never been explained, nor has the shuttle incident, although Jack Kasher has tried.
I decided to investigate this a lot more thoroughly. The main object is the one I've spent most of my time on, and what I've come up with are 5 separate independent proofs that it could not have been an ice particle. It had to be something else. Somebody suggested that there might be little tiny particles right near the camera. That doesn't work. The camera was focused at infinity. Other possible explanations, meteors, space junk, satellites don't work either. They don't change direction. So you only have ice particles or spacecraft as possibilities. And if you can prove that they were not ice particles, you have automatically proven that they were spacecraft. Now this is a computer enhancement of the main object. It's going to come up here and shoot out at the flash, and then a streak will come right through there. It'll get right up toward the left-hand side. Flash lower left. There it comes. Streaks off, and right through there comes the streak. And it continues on out. But you can see very clearly that it stops and sits there for a half a second. It stops at the beginning of the flash and waits for half a second till just after the end of the flash, and then it takes off. Now, an ice particle being pushed by a rocket exhaust can't behave that way. It has to immediately slow down, stop, and go back in the other direction. It can't sit there and watch. And that's a very decisive proof, I think, that that's not the way an ice particle could behave.
We'll be back in a moment with the rest of the story.
Coming up, our startling UFO report continues.
I have to see this to believe it.
When we uncover the horrifying tale of an extraterrestrial crash.
I've seen the autopsy reports, I've seen the photographs.
And later, this woman claims to have made love with King Arthur.
Arthur was an amazing man.
Welcome back to Encounters, the Hidden Truth. The suppressed evidence may be more far-reaching. During his 27 years in the Army, Robert Dean was exposed to many secrets, but the most incredible was a document he saw in the war room of NATO.
In 1964, a NATO-shaped military study was conducted and published, which indicated that the human race was not alone and apparently had never been alone, and that the evidence supporting this document indicated that there was an intimate interrelationship with several advanced high-technology civilizations out there. Once I realized what this damn thing had, I couldn't put it down.
This top-secret document was filled with photographs and eyewitness reports of military encounters with UFOs, including the account of a UFO that crash-landed in Germany.
Now, this big, circular, metallic object did not explode and did not come apart. It simply went into the soil, halfway buried itself, or at least 1/3 in the dirt, within sight of the Baltic, and British Army Engineer Battalion that responded to that got inside and found 12 small bodies. Now, I've seen the autopsy reports, I've seen the photographs, I've seen the autopsy photographs, and I have studied the comments made by the medical examiners as they autopsy these little bodies, and that is literally earth-shaking.
Dean believes there is a reason why this document has been suppressed.
To divulge classified, sensitive, secret information that we have been a part of or we have learned about during our career would be in violation of our national security oath. They can send us to prison for 10 years, they can fine us $10,000, and we'll forfeit all of our pay and allowances now and forever.
But occasionally, the truth leaks out. Perhaps the most dramatic encounter took place during the 1993 Hubble repair mission. Concerned about funding, NASA turned the mission into a media event, a decision that may have backfired at about 11:30 p.m. on December 8th.
Everything's going fine. The commentator is speaking, and we have a nice shot of the Earth. Here's the horizon here, and there's the sky underneath. And everything seems to be quite normal, and everything's going along fine.
It'll be fashioned into some new covers.
We're going to notice a little object move from right to left pretty soon, right about here. There it goes. Moves across there. The man stops talking. A second object moves up. The camera starts becoming fuzzy, fading out, and then really fades out. And bingo, we're back at mission control. This woman here comes up to her monitor as this has kind of surprised her. And now we have a shot of, I think it's the cargo bay, looking at a couple of the astronauts. Now this is the front, the control panel. These are the astronauts looking around. And here comes somebody in. And the statement, "You've got to see this to believe it, JT," is made.
I have to see this to believe it, JT.
So when you put all these together, segment by segment, it makes you scratch your head a little bit and wonder what might have been going on. Again, that's not a proof of anything, but it It's a curious thing.
If anybody wants to believe that there was a real extraterrestrial spaceship out there in orbit with the shuttle and with the Hubble telescope, then you have to believe that these people didn't recognize it, or if they did recognize it, that they were trying to cover up what would be the greatest scientific discovery of all time.
Kasher believes NASA began taking steps to plug up such leaks in 1991.
Up until and including this shuttle flight, NASA broadcast the picture live on NASA Select Television. After this flight, it is no longer broadcast live. The signal is scrambled when it comes down. There's a time delay, and then it's unscrambled and sent out.
What does NASA know, and why are they keeping it from the public? Ex-employees like Maurice Chatelain are convinced that the real truth about space is still hidden from us.
You know, it has been 25 years since the Apollo landing on the moon. And for 25 years, they keep lying.
Well, Sandra, I thought the entire purpose of space exploration was simply to explore space. Documentation of extraterrestrial life certainly would fall into that category.
And John, I agree with you, but we have to remember that most astronauts were recruited from the military, selected for their loyalty as well as their flying skills. So it's easy to see why they remain silent, and you really can't blame them.
Well, hopefully with all the civilians and scientists in today's space program, things might just change soon. Encounters will be back in a moment.